Hello boys and girls, my name is Rachel and I'm delighted to welcome you here to this video in Armagh Robinson Library. This is a very old museum and we are a playful museum, so we would have lots of fun toys and books for when you're able to visit that you would be able to use and play with. So you're not to worry that if you come to this very old building, there will be lots of things for you to play with. As part of this video, you will see me and two other ladies who will talk to you about some stories and the library. You are now going to be passed over to my friend Liz, who is a wonderful storyteller. And she is going to tell you a story now involving the two animals sitting beside me here.
Going to Grannies. I had a little girl whose name was Claire, and she loved nothing better than going to stay over at her granny's house. Now, I'm sure you know, if you're going to stay overnight somewhere for a sleepover, you have to pack a bag. And I'm wondering, can you help me pack it? Wonder what we should put in. Oh yes, we'll put in pajamas, and we'll put in a teddy bear, and she'll have to put in her vest and her pants and her socks, probably a t-shirt, some trousers, maybe a jumper. She'll take maybe a toy, as well as her teddy. She can't sleep without her teddy. And a nice present for Granny. I wonder what Granny would like. I wonder what you can think of. Well, Claire brought a bunch of flowers. When she got to Granny, she ran in the bedroom. You can do this by doing your knees on your lap. She ran in the bedroom. She hopped into bed. Can you do that? She ran in the bedroom. She hopped into bed. Granny pulled up the covers. Can you do that? Let's try it. Pulled up the covers. Gave her a big kiss, flicked off the light, and closed this sneaky door. And Claire started to cry. Granny said, "What's wrong, Claire?" She said, "I'm lonely in here all by myself." "Right," said Granny. "Tomorrow night you take the dog into bed. Now, can you help me with this?" She ran in the bedroom, hopped into bed. The dog hopped into bed. Granny pulled up the covers and gave her a big kiss, flicked off the light, closed the sneaky door. Ruff, ruff, ruff. "What's wrong, Claire?" said Granny. "We're still lonely." "Right," said Granny. "You can take the cat tomorrow night." So the next night she ran in the bedroom, hopped into bed, dog hopped into bed, cat hopped into bed. Granny pulled up the covers and gave her a big kiss, flicked off the light, closed the sneaky door. Ruff, ruff, ruff. Meow. Granny said, "What's wrong now?" She said, "We're still lonely." You can help with that bit. "We're still lonely." "Right," said Granny. "Tomorrow night, what could we take? We've had the dog, we've had the cat. You can take the pet lamb." So the next night she ran in the bedroom, hopped into bed. Dog hopped into bed, cat hopped into bed, lamb hopped into bed. Granny pulled up the covers and gave her a kiss, flicked off the light, closed the squeaky door. Ruff, 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 meow, bah. Granny said, "What's wrong now, Claire?" And she said, "We're still lonely." "Right," said Granny, "it's your last night. I've only got one animal left. You can take the horse to bed." So the next night, can you imagine? She ran in the bedroom, hopped into bed, dog hopped into bed, cat hopped into bed, lamb hopped into bed, horse hopped into bed. The bed went crash. The floor went crash. The whole house went crash. And Granny had to go out and buy a brand new house. But grannies are clever. She bought a big strong house with a big strong floor and a big strong bed to hold. Can you remember? Claire, a dog, a cat, a lamb, and most of all, the horse.
Well, boys and girls, as well as adults, that was a wonderful story from Liz about going to Grannies. And you might be able to see the dog and the cat have moved and they're somewhere just behind me. You might be able to see them. So the next story that Liz is going to tell us involves a rabbit, and you can see here that I have some friends to help us along with the video today.
The rabbit's tail. I'm sure, boys and girls, you all know what a rabbit looks like. It has got big long ears and it's got a little short fluffy tail. And I'm going to tell you a story about how that came to be. You see, a long time ago, rabbits had tiny ears and big swooshy tails. And Rabbit was a very cheeky animal. He'd go about saying, "Na, na, 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 my tail's better than your tail," and tease other animals. He said to the mouse, "Ha, you don't even have a proper tail. You've only got a piece of string." And Mouse ran crying. Mouse ran to Fox. Fox said, "What's wrong with you?" He said, "The rabbit, he said, I've only got a piece of string for a tail. He says his tail's the best in the whole world." "What?" said Fox. "Everybody knows that my beautiful tail's the best. Leave it to me. I'll sort him out." The next day, Rabbit was hopping along. "Na, na, 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 my tail's better than your tail." And he saw Fox. Fox was sitting beside a pond. It was cold, it was the winter, and Fox had his tail in the water. "What are you doing there?" said Rabbit. "I'm fishing," said Fox. "What?" "It's a new trick. I put my tail in the water, fish come up, they get caught, and I go flick. I've caught myself a fish." "Ha," said Rabbit. "I don't even eat fish, but I know I can catch more than you." And Rabbit sat down and plopped in his big long tail. Well, they sat and they sat and they sat and they sat and they sat. Can you help me with that bit? Let's try. They sat and they sat and they sat and they sat. They sat, they sat, they sat and they sat and they sat, and it got colder. Can you shiver? And colder and colder. "Oh," said Fox, "I'm going home." "Na, na, 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 I'm staying," said Rabbit. And he sat and he sat and he sat and he sat and he sat, but it got colder and colder and colder. And Rabbit thought, "I think I'll go home too." And he looked around, nobody looking, and he tried to get up, but he couldn't get up because his tail was stuck. The water in the pond had frozen because it was so cold. So he said, "Help, help." Nobody came. And then he tried something more clever. He said, "Please." When you say please, it always helps. And a beautiful bird came down and said, "What's wrong? Can you please pull me out? I'm stuck." So the bird caught hold of the rabbit by the 2 ears and pulled and pulled and pulled until pop. "Thank you." And he set the rabbit down. But because of all the pulling, Rabbit's ears had got long. And because he was snapped out of the water, his big long tail had snapped off. So that, boys and girls, is why rabbits these days have big, long, floppy ears and little, short tails. So that's the rabbit's tail. One of my favourite stories, and I hope you liked it too.
You would have just heard a wonderful story from Liz about a rabbit, and you might have noticed that the rabbits that were with me have disappeared, and hopefully you might be able to pick them out just behind me. Now I would like to tell you a story about a fox, and you can see beside me here that I have some friends who are going to help me tell this wonderful story. I have in front of me a print which is very old, and it shows the story of the fox and the crow. And this story was written by a man called Aesop a very long time ago. So in this story, one day a fox was walking along and passed a tree, and in the tree he could hear a crow. And when he looked up, he noticed that the crow had a large piece of cheese in its beak. And you can see here in this image the crow with the cheese in between its beak. And the fox thought, that looks very tasty. So what the fox did to try and get the cheese was to give the crow lots of compliments about its beautiful singing voice, in the hope that the crow would open up its beak and drop the cheese. And what happened was the crow took all these wonderful compliments and forgot about the cheese in its mouth, opened up its beak to sing a lovely song and dropped the cheese, meaning that the fox was able to take the cheese and run away. So now Liz is going to tell you a story of a fox as well.
Soxy the Fox. I'd like to tell you the story of a very clever fox called Soxy and a boy called Ben. Ben was a whinge bag. I hope you don't know any of them. People that go, "I don't like that, I don't want that, I don't like that." That's the way he was all the time. He was very spoilt. And so when he got his holidays from school, his mum and dad sent him off to stay with his granny, and he loved going to his granny's house because all he had to do was and Granny gave him pretty much anything he wanted. The first thing she did was to make his favourite dinner. Now, if I was to ask you people what your favourite dinner was, you'd maybe say pizza or burgers. His favourite dinner was his granny's stew, and she put out a bowl of stew and immediately he looked at it and went, She said, what's wrong, pet? It's your favourite. He said, there's no brown bread. And right enough, Granny hadn't made any of her famous brown bread. She said, don't you worry, Grandad will run me down to the shop. You sit there and be good and we'll be back in a minute. Keep the door locked, don't open the door. Yeah, the Granny. Once he got his own way, he was a different boy. Now their house was in the middle of some woods, and in those woods there lived a fox. And the thing that the fox, whose name was Soxy, liked most of all was stew. She smelt it and she came up and she knocked the door. Who is it? It's me, Soxy the Fox. Open the door, let me in. My granny said I'm not to open the door to anybody. Did she mention the window? No. If you open the window and let me in, I'll take you for a ride on my tail 3 times around the kitchen. Why, that sounded good. So he opened the window, in came the fox, straight over, ate the whole pot of stew, hop on my back, then hopped on the fox's back, and she went out the window and away over the fields to her den, with Ben going, I want my granny. Stop that horrible whinging, said the fox. I'm not going to hurt you. I just need a hand to clear up my den. Those fox cubs of mine make an awful mess. Granny and Grandad came back. No Ben, no stew, a strong smell of fox and footprints out the window. Oh no, that fox has got our boy. We have to go and get him back. Grandad, go and get your bagpipes. So Grandad went into the cupboard and got his bagpipes. And Granny went under the sink and got a saucepan. Now this is where you can help me, because you have to learn to play the saucepan. You hold it in one hand and you go like this. Bang, 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 bang. Can you all try that? Let's try it. Bang, 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 bang. Now, to playing the bagpipes when you don't have bagpipes, you have to hold your nose and go, yeah. Can you do that? It's a bit funny. So they went to the fox's den. And there's a little rhyme you can help me with. It goes like this. Soxy, Soxy, in your den, bring us back our little Ben. You'll learn it before we're finished. So they went to the fox's den. Bang, 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 bang. Let's go. Soxy, Soxy, in your den, bring us back our little Ben. And the fox said, who is making that noise outside my den? One of you cubs go up, find out who's making that noise and tell them to stop it at once. For I've got a headache, a nose ache, a tummy ache, a toes ache, and a very bad earache too. Well, do you know what? The little cub went up and said, hello, could you please stop making that horrible noise, because my mummy's got a headache, a nose ache, a tummy ache, a toes ache, and a very bad earache too. Do you know what they did? They just grabbed him and put him in Granny's bag. Then they started bang, 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 bang. Soxy, Soxy, in your den, bring us back our little Ben. Oh, where's that cub got to? Do you know what? I'm going to go up and do it myself. If you want a job doing, you've got to do it yourself. So the fox went up and said, excuse me, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you want here, but could you please stop making that horrible noise at once, because I've got a headache, a nose ache, a tummy ache, a toes ache, and a very bad earache too. Guess what I've got in my bag, says Granny. And she held up the bag and the little fox was shouting, Mummy, Mummy, let me out. Oh, you've got my cub, yes, and you've our grandson. Could we talk? So they talked. Granny and Grandad let out the little fox. Ben came back, only a few chicken bones and feathers on him. But other than that, he was a changed boy. He said please and thank you. He never whinged, he never moaned. But sometimes at night, he and Granny and Grandad would sit and sing by the fire. Soxy, Soxy, in your den, bring us back our little Ben. And that's the story of a bold boy called Ben and a very clever fox called Soxy.
We would have just heard a wonderful story from Liz about a fox. And again, you might notice that the things behind me, they have changed and that the animals are lining up 2 by 2. And you might be able to guess why they're lining up 2 by 2 to make a trip. So I have in front of me a very large book full of images by Bassano. And one of these refers to the story that Liz is going to tell us very shortly. So I would like to show you this image now. Before I would open this wonderfully old book, I will put on a pair of gloves to keep the book safe and to keep my hands nice and clean as well. And I'm also using a book rest, so you'll be able to see when I open this very old book that I'm not causing any damage to it at all. So this is a very old image of the preparation for Noah's Ark. You can see lots of animals such as cows, horses, dogs and birds all getting ready to go on the ark. And you can also see lots of people chopping down trees and building the ark in preparation for the journey. And now Liz is going to tell you a lovely story about Noah's Ark.
A long time ago, a man called Noah heard there was going to be a big flood. It was going to cover the whole of the earth. So he built a boat called an ark, and he loaded his family onto it, and he loaded 2 of every sort of animal. 2 giraffes, 2 elephants, you name it, they went on it. Everything was going well, the ark was sailing along, when all of a sudden Noah said, "Oh no, look, there's a hole in the boat. Water's coming in. Somebody please help. Elephant, you're big, you help." So Elephant came along and he put his big trunk out and he put it over the hole. Too salty, Noah, I can't help. Next came Monkey, and he sat on it. Oh, he soon jumped up. He said, "I don't have any fur on my bottom, I can't sit there, it's too cold." Next, when Noah was wondering who would help, "Ruff," said Dog, "I'll help." And Dog came along and he put his nose into the hole. And he kept his nose in that hole all the time the ark was sailing. When everybody got off, Noah turned to Dog and said, "Thank you, Dog. You've saved us all. From now on, we're going to call Dog man's best friend." But when he looked at Dog's nose, it had been in the water for so long, it was wet and cold. So that, boys and girls, is why dogs have had wet, cold noses ever since.
Well, boys and girls, I hope that you enjoyed this whole video for you. We do let grown-ups look at it as well, but this is very much for our young visitors coming to the library. And I hope you enjoyed the different stories and all the toys that were here. The bear is helping me say thank you to take part. And also I want to thank Liz Weir, a lovely storyteller who's well known to lots of boys and girls and their grown-ups. And also to my colleague, Rachel Toner, who is our Visitor Engagement Officer. Rachel is one of the people who will say hello to you when you come to visit us with your mummies and daddies and other family members. So thank you very much for being part of this, and I hope you will look at this again and again, and that you also will come at some time to see not only all our books, but also our teddies, which are all waiting for you. Thank you very much.